Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel for your weekly by-election roundup video. This is very much the bread and butter of this channel, so welcome, thank you for being here, and that goes indeed also to the 70% of you who aren't subscribed yet. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider pushing the subscribe button and the notification bell. I do believe that we cover some pretty unique content in terms of UK elections and polling on this channel. So please do come join the community and get involved in the comments. I'm always keen to hear your guys' thoughts and perspectives on things. So let's get straight into these by-elections this week then. And it was a very, very good night for the Liberal Democrats, but it didn't start so well for them. So firstly, we're going to Copdock and Washbrook Ward in Babergh. And I'm very careful with how I pronounce that because I don't want to get demonetised. So the Liberal Democrats were defending here and they lost to Reform. Now that's something we don't necessarily see too often. Liberal Democrats and Reform winning at the expense of each other. It's usually one or the other winning at the expense of either the Conservatives or Labour. But here, look, I don't know what happened, but the Liberal Democrats took a 27.5 point hit to their previous vote share. So collapsed down to just under 29%. The Greens did well here, increasing by just under 10 points, up to the low 20s%. And Reform were able to, because of that sort of vote splitting, Reform were able to sneak in with 32% of the votes and win. So look, a low vote share winning margin this time. And, you know, we mentioned in the past couple of weeks how Reform have tended to be winning by increased margins, so up into the 40s%. Here we're seeing, you know, low 30s again, which is kind of been typical of the last year, as Reform have been establishing a bit of a foothold in various places. And I think we'll cover maybe the reason why that is in a moment. But like, again, a very good turnout, or you know, up to 38% almost of the electorate. So still, look, poor in general, but for a local council by-election, 38% roughly is a very good turnout, and obviously a low margin of victory for Reform, only getting already beating the Liberals by about 3% there. So look, a slender win for Reform, thanks largely to that vote splitting between the Greens and the Liberal Democrats. But again, look, an increased turnout, Reform getting a good share of the vote, and also the Greens getting a good share of the vote, and Conservatives down 15 points. So once again, we're seeing more people coming out to vote. And look, the Labour Party were there at one point. It's not an area of the country for them, so that's what I haven't mentioned. But again, increased turnout, or a higher turnout than we used to seeing, and yet the Legacy Party or Legacy Parties vote share going down, with what we used to consider minor parties vote shares going up, and that's interesting, as we've mentioned. I said it was a good win for Reform this, and I say that because if you look back to when this council was last elected in its entirety, which was 2023, you can see it was a very liberal result. The Greens got the most votes, the most seats. Independents second most, so difficult to tell there in terms of what liberal or left wing or right wing or whatever it might be. But Greens on 10, the Independent and others on 9, and the Liberal Democrats on 5, with the Tories on 7. So it was a very liberal result. So this seems to be a more liberal voting area, liberal inclined area. So look, I think there's a good win for Reform. Now, like I say, they only really won, or they were certainly helped in their victory because of the vote splitting between the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, it seems. But still, that's a very good win for the Reform Party in a more, what seems to be a more liberal voting area. And what's perhaps more concerning, if you're a Liberal Democrat, is that particular ward, which I'm not going to pronounce again, has been held by the Liberal Democrats since it was created with boundary changes in 2019. So a good solid 6 years of Liberal Democrats winning that seat have been ended by Reform, which, like I say, is unusual to see. Like we just covered, there's a couple of reasons for that, but look, a good win for Reform there. This council's up for election again in 2027, so you know, who knows what might happen between now and then. All right, moving on then, we go up to Preston. Now, this is where the good news starts to roll in for the Liberal Democrats. So Ashton Ward, Preston Council, Labour defending here, and the Liberal Democrats, as you can see, with a gain. They increased their vote share by 15 points. Now, again, it's a lowish vote share win, or lowest share of the vote to win with, 37%, not into those 40s that we've seen elsewhere. But look, Labour here you can see were a long way ahead previously with over half of the votes. Took a huge 34-point hit. This is a weekly occurrence now in seats that they're defending. Labour taking massive hits of 25, 30, here almost 35 points. And the Liberal Democrats were able to capitalise on that. Reform in third. I thought this might be a seat where Reform could win. Of course, they did very well in the Lancashire County Council election earlier this year. But in all fairness, Liberal Democrats did do very well in Preston itself in that election. So the Preston wards or Preston districts for Lancashire, the Liberal Democrats did do pretty well. Here, turnout 28%, so just below that 30% that seems to be becoming the average. So not as high as we've seen. And the Liberal Democrats with a very comfortable or fairly comfortable 11% margin of victory. Not the greatest, but yeah, like I say, certainly a bit of clear water there between the Liberal Democrats and Labour. And I suppose just to highlight and emphasise the danger that I think Labour is in going into the local elections in England next May, and we'll be building up with previews and stuff for those elections starting in November as we get into the 6-month period before. So if you're interested in that, please do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Look, Preston City Council is going to be one of those councils that's up for election. Now, it's only a third, so it's one of these district councils or city councils where a third is elected each time. So there was no election here this year, but last year in May 2024, a third was elected. This was a result after that election. Labour with a 6-seat majority, so slender. And in 2025, bearing in mind there's been no election this year, it's just by-elections and defections and things, already that Labour majority sliced down to just 3. So look, there's a chance if there's more resignations or seats come up available before 2025, Labour may even lose that majority before May in Preston. But just to highlight, I think they're in huge trouble across this whole area of England in the northwest. Not to mention London as well. They're going to be hugely exposed. Okay, moving on. Mead Vale and St John's Ward, Reigate and Banstead District Council. It's a Liberal Democrat hold here. Look, not too much to say. Liberal Democrats increased their vote share very healthily by 11 points, up to 48% of the vote, almost winning half the vote. Very comfortable margin of victory, 641 votes, which is 30% lead over second place. Second place here was the Greens, although they actually had a very small reduction there, but essentially evens, 17%. And here the Conservatives just finishing ahead of Reform. But again, look, a pretty damaging 17-point reduction there for the Conservative Party again. So look, further evidence of the Liberal Democrats starting to squeeze the Tories out. We're going to see more of this in a minute because a lot of these by-elections were in Surrey. But the Tories getting squeezed in their former heartlands. A very good result for the Liberal Democrats there. Next we go up to Scotland, so Ayr North, South Ayrshire Council, defending here with the SNP. It's an independent game. Now look guys, I have to say again, I'm sorry, but I don't have much value to add on Scottish local democracy, local government stuff. I just don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough to really opine on it. But it's interesting to see the SNP taking a pretty damaging 22-point whack to their vote share on the first preference. Labour finishing just behind them on 20%, not really too much change from previous. And look, Reform again finishing third, not third total here, obviously they're fourth, but in terms of the major parties, finishing in third, comfortably ahead of the Conservative Party, who again take a close to 15% or 15-point reduction. So that is a trend we're starting to see more often in Scotland now, is the top three tend to be either the SNP or Labour in the SNP, depending on the order, and then Reform in third, with Conservatives a fairly distant third place. And obviously there's parts of the country where the Liberal Democrats do quite well as well. But generally speaking, we are seeing SNP, Labour and Reform making up the top three in Scottish voting. So that's interesting. Up there in Scotland, 27% of a turnout. So not bad again in terms of turnout there. So moving on, Staines Ward, Spelthorne Council. Now, I don't know what's happened here, but the Green Party were defending. The Liberal Democrats have gained off of them, so another good win for the Liberal Democrats. But the Greens, look, down 28 points to less than 10%. Now, I don't know what happened. I had a quick look because I thought this smells like a scandal or, some sort of drama, but I couldn't find anything. Particularly the Green councillor bearing in mind the Greens, you know, they're not big fans of air travel. They like wealth taxes and all these things. Well, the Green councillor has up sticks and moved to Dubai for work. Good, I'm happy for him. But the Liberal Democrats, look, up 30. Well, in fact, they didn't even stand here before. So straight in with 37.9% of the votes to win it again fairly comfortably, almost a 15% margin of victory over second place, which again is Reform, who got 23.5% of the vote, again having not stood here before. So two parties coming in there to take first and second spots. Conservatives and Labour not really anywhere to be seen, as you can see there, not really to be mentioned. But look, another good gain for the Liberal Democrats. All right, so now we move on to Surrey County Council, which had 3 by-elections this week, and then the next 3 we're going to cover. So firstly, Camberley West District for Surrey County Council. Conservatives defending. It's yet again another Liberal Democrat gain. The Conservatives down 28.8 points. Again, you know, following on from my video last week in the immediate aftermath of the Conservative Party conference. Look, that Kemi speech was lauded by Conservative supporters and Conservative activists and what have you. But look, it's not cut through. We saw last week it didn't cut through to the more working class area up in the northeast, and this week we're seeing it's not cutting through to the more relatively affluent middle class areas in Surrey. So I'm afraid I have to say it hasn't appealed to many people. The Liberal Democrats here up to, let's call it 50% of the vote. Let's give it to them. Very, very good result, increasing their vote share by 16 points. And the Conservatives finishing in third, in fact, behind Reform, who get 26% of the vote, coming in for the first time standing here. So once again, a main party, and this happened in Preston as well, by the way, I forgot to mention it. A main party, Conservative Labour, defending a seat, not even finishing in second place. We are seeing these 2 main parties dying. They are dying off, and they're being replaced predominantly by Reform and the Liberal Democrats. And that is the trajectory that we are on. Whether that changes in the future, we'll have to wait and see, but that is certainly the way it's going. Look here, turnout, again, 27%, so slightly below that 30 mark. But still pretty good, closer to what we would sort of consider as an average, and obviously a very, very healthy winning margin for the Liberal Democrats there, gaining off the Conservatives in Surrey. Again, bear in mind, they beat the Conservatives in Surrey a few weeks back to deprive the Conservatives of a majority control on this council, so it's no longer a majority Conservative administration. They're running it as a minority now, and look, the Liberal Democrats still eating into that Conservative administration. This next one is a Liberal Democrat defence in Surrey, Caterham Valley District this time, and look, pretty much preserved their vote share, increased it ever so slightly, but again, almost 50% of the vote, and goes to say, or goes to show, Surrey is becoming a Liberal Democrat safe area of the country. It used to be Conservative heartlands. It isn't anymore. The Liberal Democrats doing very, very well in this county, and the Conservatives, again, down 23.5 points, you know, devastating, to finish once again behind Reform, who come in for the first time at 24.5% of the vote. So look, again, it's Liberal Democrats versus Reform. Now Reform are nowhere close to winning here, but it's just very interesting to see that is becoming the duopoly, you know, and just following on from what I just said, even in areas of the country where we don't necessarily reflexively think Reform might win, they're still managing to perform as well to get the runner up. So look, again, very, very good performance by the Liberal Democrats in that Surrey seat. The last Surrey County Council seat, Guildford South East District. So this one was being defended by a local party. I don't know anything about those guys, but they've lost to the Liberal Democrats. Again, an increase of 18 points here for the Lib Dems. So 3 very, very strong performances from the Liberal Democrats and Surrey County Council. The Localists lost 21 points, and the Conservatives lost 8 points here, so not as bad. Here, Reform did only manage to come in 4th place with 12% of the vote. Again, very comfortable winning margin for the Liberal Democrats, 18.5%, 32 or 33% of the vote. 33% turnout in Guildford too. So again, a good turnout, and this time we're seeing sort of more people voting for the Liberal Democrats with an increased turnout. So interesting stuff to see. Moving on then, last but not least, Whiteleaf Ward for Tandridge District Council. Liberal Democrats defending, and once again the Liberal Democrats holding, and once again with a very impressively increased vote share up 14 points to 45% of the vote, comfortably ahead of second place, which again was Reform on 26.7. The others sort of so far behind, it's not really worth mentioning. Don't have a percentage here for turnout, unfortunately, but again, a pretty comfortable margin of victory for the Liberal Democrats on 18%. So, and it's certainly not last nor least. I just realised, coming to edit the video, I forgot to do Broadheath Ward in Trafford. Can't believe it. Broadheath Ward in Trafford, another Labour defence, another Labour loss, but a Conservative gain this time. So quite unusual to see. Conservative gaining, but with a reduced vote share, so down 4 points previously, but enough for them to win because Labour declined again by a pretty hefty 19 points. But you can see it's pretty evenly, or it's a fairly even race. So you had the Conservatives on 36, with a decent 14-point margin, actually. But then the Liberal Democrats not too far behind on 19 and Reform on 16. So the Conservatives actually a fairly decent amount ahead. And look at the turnout here, almost 50% up in Trafford. So just an interesting thing to notice, really. I mean, increased or a high turnout, a good turnout. Conservatives win, but with a reduced vote share. Labour take a vote share hit. The Liberal Democrats get a pretty good vote share boost, and Reform get a decent vote share boost. But we haven't seen... It's just interesting to see that maybe the turnout in Trafford's always good. I don't know, or in this ward is always good. Perhaps this isn't unusual for this area, but it's just strange to see such a good turnout, but not necessarily a big surge for one or two parties. The Conservatives win with a 14% margin, but with less share of the vote than they got last time. But there's no great surge behind one of the parties. So it's just a funny old result. Conservatives win anyway. They'll be very, very happy with that, of course. And so actually it means that on a night of 10 by-elections taking place, the Labour Party are the only party that come out with it with absolutely nothing to show. Very, very disappointing for them in terms of results. And again, we've seen very, very damaging declines in the vote share too. And again, just to show the map with these elections, because Trafford Borough Council will again, same as Preston, will also be being elected next May 2026. Look, here you can see Labour's majority in 2024, a bit healthier than it was in Preston. But likewise, you can see it's already been eaten into slightly. Again, it's still healthy. But look, this is another part of the country where they're going to struggle. They're going to come under a lot of pressure from potentially from Reform. You can't write them off anywhere now, but I think the Liberal Democrats will give them a bit of pressure, and potentially the Greens as well across the whole sort of council area. So look, like I said, if we just bring that down, that whole northwest area and then spreading out across into sort of Yorkshire and London as well, the Labour Party are going to be under huge pressure next May when those elections come round. All right, so that is the roundup for this week. Look, we have to say it's a very, very good night for the Liberal Democrats. With the exception of the slip up against Reform in Babergh, they managed to defend all of the seats they had up, and they won at the expense of the Conservatives, the Labour Party and the Green Party. So like I said a bit earlier on, after one of those, when we looked at one of those, they are, it seems, managing to take votes from a decent, it's kind of the opposite of Labour, who are losing votes in lots of directions. Liberal Democrats seem to be being able to bring votes in from various different directions. Can they maintain that? I don't know. Are they... I suppose the thing for me is I don't really know what the Liberal Democrats stand for, frankly. I know they don't like Brexit, and I know they don't like Trump, and I know they don't like Nigel Farage and Reform. As for what they do stand for, I don't really know without going and looking up their manifesto on their website, which I'm not going to do. So, yeah, I wonder if they can maintain that, because I think generally people like to vote for something rather than just voting against something, if you know what I mean. And I think we saw that last year in the general election when the Conservatives' their main play to the electorate was vote for us so you don't get Labour, and it worked out disastrously for them. So, yeah, can the Liberal Democrats maintain it? Let me know what you think in the comments. Will they become, let's assume that Reform becomes one of the established parties in a new two-party duopoly. Will the Liberal Democrats become the other side of that coin, or something else come along to take their place? Will Labour have a renaissance? Who knows? It's not looking likely at the moment. But let me know what you think in the comments. All right, so next week then, look, we had 10 by-elections this week. Next week we've got another 7, so it's not stopping there. They're going to be good ones as well, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the video next week. And look, we've got one in Birmingham Look, yeah, I think that's going to be a big vote decline for a vote share decline for Labour next week defending. You can see the Liberals run them pretty close last time up in 2022. Um, Reform standing, maybe the Greens might capitalise too. Be interested to see just for that one alone. You should tune into that video next week. Newtown and Christchurch and Colchester again. Look, Colchester constituency projected to go to Reform, but it's a Liberal Democrat Labour coalition on the council. The Conservatives actually have the most seats of any individual party, so that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Whittlesey North West in Fenland, Conservatives defending there with a pretty healthy majority. Can they hang on? Only 4 parties standing there, no Liberal Democrats, so that might help the Conservatives to hang on potentially. We'll see. Portsmouth as a localist defence, but there's no localist party standing this time. So again, Labour, Liberal Democrats, Reform and Conservatives and the Green Party are all going up for that one. That's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, that South Coast starting to look a bit more Reform as far as the nowcast goes. Portsmouth North currently projected to go to the Reform Party. Portsmouth South still Labour just about hanging on down there. So that's going to be a good one too. We've got Dunster in Somerset. Somerset, the Liberal Democrats doing so well. I'll be surprised to see the Liberal Democrats not win there at their expense of the Conservatives again. We've got another Somerset in Glastonbury, likewise. And then lastly, we've got Torridge in Devon, where it's an independent defence, but they're not standing this time around. So it's again going to be an interesting one to see because we've got the Tories, Reform, Lib Dems, Labour, and Green standing. Who's going to benefit from there being no independent. It's going to be a good week, another big week of by-election action next week, so do make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell hit. I look forward to seeing you then. Please do look after yourself, and I'll see you all on the next one.